What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Dr. Vincent Esposito, and today we're going to be talking about insulin resistance. So what it is, kind of how it happens, and most importantly, what can you do about it? But before then, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. It means a lot. I want to keep coming out with these videos twice a week, and your support really goes a long way. So insulin resistance is closely related, associated with type 2 diabetes. And I want to kind of put that in perspective before we jump into insulin resistance as a whole. So it's estimated by the American Diabetes Association that it costs one individual over $6,600 per year just to manage diabetes. And it's also estimated it's going to cost the US government over $500 billion once we hit 2020 just to manage diabetes. And this is why that we have to really kind of address and focus on treating insulin resistance going forward, because it leads to just debilitating issues going forward. So to start this video off, there's really no better way to understand what insulin resistance is before we kind of go over what exactly happens when we eat food. So when we eat food, it goes down into our stomachs, into our intestines, where it's broken down into glucose molecules. Now, glucose molecules end up moving from our intestines into the bloodstream. And when that happens, blood sugar levels begin to rise. In response to blood sugar levels rising, the pancreas then secretes insulin. Now, insulin then allows cells to take glucose from the bloodstream and bring them into the cells to lower our blood sugar level. The cells then are able to use glucose as energy, and after that, insulin levels begin to drop. And like I said, glucose levels in the bloodstream begin to drop because they're not in the bloodstream anymore. They're actually in the cells. So the cells continue to use this glucose until supplies run out. And when supplies run out, insulin levels fall and glucose levels fall. In response, if we haven't eaten again, so there's no glucose coming in from an external source, the pancreas releases a hormone known as glucagon, where it stimulates gluconeogenesis, literally the creation of glucose in the liver. So what is insulin's role in all this? Well, insulin's a hormone that triggers the mechanism similar to knocking on a door. So insulin is the compound that knocks on the cell's door. And under normal circumstances, that door is answered and glucose is essentially able to enter the cell normally. No problems. That's essentially insulin's role in this whole situation. The problem with insulin resistance is when insulin comes knocking too often. It's almost similar to the boy who cried wolf. So if insulin is constantly knocking at the door, if someone's constantly knocking at your door, think about it. Would you continue to answer the door if it's always happening? Probably not. And that's exactly what happens with these cells. They do not end up opening that door, which means glucose ends up not entering the cell at all. Now, in response to this, the pancreas doesn't know what to do because it has all this kind of excess glucose in the blood, and the pancreas kind of panics and continues to make insulin in an effort to get this glucose from the bloodstream into the cells. And over time, this becomes incredibly detrimental, and the cells that are responsible for producing insulin, the beta cells, begin to shut down and stop working properly. And that, in a nutshell, is what insulin resistance is. It's this over-excretion of insulin. You're excreting so much insulin, but the cells are not responding to it because they've been exposed to it so often because of these constantly high blood sugar levels. So we need to kind of trace back our steps and how do we get to this in the first place? So the real reason why simple carbohydrates and processed foods are such key factors in insulin control, insulin resistance, and how metabolically active the whole system is how quickly they're broken down. So the reason that simple carbs are such an issue is because they're broken down so quickly, which means blood glucose levels spike very quickly. And in this situation, the pancreas is under a lot of stress because it needs to secrete enough insulin to get all this glucose out of the bloodstream and into cells. Now, this differs from complex carbohydrates and fiber, things you're finding in whole foods, in your vegetables, in your fruits, nuts, seeds, because yes, they contain carbohydrates, but they're broken down much slower because they're attached to fiber, which is indigestible. So it takes much longer for the intestines to extract those carbohydrates into the bloodstream. So in this situation, the pancreas isn't necessarily overworked because there's a slower stream of carbohydrates going into the system versus a spike almost immediately after you consume something like a simple carbohydrate, potato chips or candy or something like that. Now, among other things, insulin resistance is associated with things like weight gain, Alzheimer's disease, cancers. There's tons of different chronic diseases that are associated with insulin resistance, and getting that under control is really going to play a key factor in your overall health going forward. So it's important to know what to do about it when it comes to that point, or if you happen to have a diagnosis of metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes or something like that, there are steps you can take, and we're going to go over that right now. And as I alluded to earlier, those key steps in the beginning are going to be eliminating things like high fructose corn syrup, simple carbohydrates, the chips, the candies, the processed foods. All these things are going to really cause insulin resistance and cause those spikes in blood glucose, which we're not really looking for. Other things that play major roles are things like hydrogenated oils and vegetable oils, things like soybean oil, canola oil, things like that, rapeseed oil. These are all going to have negative impacts on our ability to control the release of insulin and our blood sugar levels long term. And honestly, if you really want to get this under control, I suggest you pause this video right now and go through your cupboards. And if you see any of these added sweeteners or high fructose corn syrup or those hydrogenated oils, do yourself the favor and just start tossing them, because all they're doing is making the situation worse. Now, at the same time, we want to be incorporating foods that are higher in fiber, that are more nutrient dense, to help replace kind of all those nutrients you might have lost or aren't getting at all based on what you're eating. So we want to be focusing on those nuts, those seeds, those plant-based foods. So we're talking in their whole unprocessed form. So whole vegetables, whole fruits, things like that. And that's going to make a huge difference. I outline more of these basics in my video. I'll link it around here. So use that kind of as a reference going forward. And that'll be play a really key role in this. Other lifestyle factors play a key role as well. So things like how physically active you are, how well you sleep, how great your stress levels are. Can you control stress? Can you manage it? Is there too much? I go over all these in my 5 pillars of health videos. I could link the playlist, I think somewhere around here or in the description. I'll do that. Managing all these things will help control insulin resistance going forward too. So it's really important that you take kind of this holistic approach when it comes to insulin resistance. Yes, the nutrition is really important, but it's not the only thing out there. So you need to be aware of other things that could cause these issues, and just taking a more holistic view will help you do that. So that's what I have. Those are kind of the basics of what insulin resistance is and how it gets going today. If you found this information useful, please subscribe and like below. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, concerns, complaints, leave those in the section below. Maybe I missed something. Maybe you want more something talked about more in depth. Happy to do so. I'm really looking forward to keeping that conversation open and creating that dialogue. So feel free to chat. I'll get to it as soon as I can. Maybe there'll be a video on it in the future. But until then, really appreciate your time. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next time.